Okay guys, here's your holiday lifting program. A couple notes to get started off here. This is just a really important time of year that you can get a lot of good training in here because, again, you don't have much else going on other than training and watching football and getting together with friends and family and stuff like that. So what this little image down here is kind of shows us ideally what happens with your body during workouts and in terms of getting better. So we have our performance over here, we have our time down here, and we have what's called this super compensation here, where every single time that you lift, so again, these are every time you see a red arrow, that's when your body lifts. Your body actually gets worse in terms of its ability to get stronger and faster, but then if you give it time to recover, you get that super compensation, and then you give it another training stimulus, and so on and so forth. But over time, as you can see, your performance level goes up. And again, this time of year, you don't have much else going on, so you can get a lot of good recovery happening. So over this time of year here, we're only going to have about 9 workouts in these 3 weeks, so it's important to kind of go hard with them, lift heavy weights, and then when you're not doing that, it's time to eat and rest and take advantage of that. So again, there are only 9 workouts. It's pretty simple, but it's not necessarily easy. And to make it even more effective, we're going to sort of combine it with our throwing program, which I'll talk about in a second here. So you're going to warm up, you're going to throw, you're going to sprint, and then you're going to go lift. The sooner you can kind of condense those stresses together, the more recovery time we can have. So if we did a workout here, and then a couple hours later we did our lifting, or even a day later, we'd be messing up this ideal sort of super compensation method here. So here's our lifting schedule. I put this together with the throwing schedule for the pitchers. Position guys, I think you guys are going to be throwing a little bit differently on some other days, but for the most part, this is what it's going to be kind of looking like. So everyone's going to lift on the 14th, the 16th, the 18th, the 21st, 23rd, 26th, 28th, 30th, and then January 2nd before you come back to campus. If this doesn't work out with your schedule, try to mix it up a little bit. There's a couple sort of days in between here. Obviously, I left kind of Christmas and New Year's Eve, New Year's Day out of it. But try to make sure that since we're doing these, what we call sort of these full body workouts, that we always have a day off in between. And again, these are sort of vital. Again, we can throw during them, but we're going to lift every other day. So again, try to figure out with your schedule, if you can stick to this, it's even easier. So the sprinting program, sort of on our day 1 and our day 2 and our day 3, as we can see here, we're going to do kind of different things here. We're going to do, on day 1, we're going to use half kneeling sprints. So again, this applies to pitchers and position players. You're going to do 2 sprints. That's 1 sprint kneeling on your right, 1 sprint kneeling on your right leg, 1 sprint kneeling on your left leg. So you're just going to do 10 yards. You're going to rest 60 seconds between each one. Once you've done your 1 on each side, then you're going to increase the distance to 15 yards, same amount of rest, and again, same thing. You're gonna work your way up to 20 yards. On day 2, we're going to use what we call sort of rolling starts. So here's the distance that you're going to be sprinting, 30 and 40 yards, but you're going to have 10 yards to sort of build up that speed, so you get a kind of a gradual build up, and then you're sprinting hard for either the 30 or the 40 yards. You'll see more rest is required for the longer distances here. And then day 3, we're just going to start in a classic sort of base stealing position. Just 2 sprints. If you want to, if you're a pitcher, if you want to switch the sides that you're doing it on, so you got your right leg closer towards second base. If you want to do the other way, just to mix it up, you can, but no big deal here. Again, you're going to sprint 20 yards, rest 60 seconds, do it again, and then come back and do your 2 sprints at 30 yards with a 90-second rest. Your day 1 here, again, you guys are gonna know a lot of these, all these exercises. I've added in some exercises that you guys might not know. They'll be at the end of this slideshow that you'll be able to sort of see what they are. But for the most part, we've been doing deadlifts for a while. We did a whole webinar on it and everything like that. But just for the most part, you'll get this in an Excel spreadsheet. But day 1 is kind of our deadlift day. Day 2 is going to be our rear foot elevated split squat, aka Bulgarian split squat day, and then day 3 is going to be our front squat day. So again, these are all full body days. You're doing lower body, upper body, 3 times a week, and again, it's geared that way so that you don't have to spend much time in the weight room. You get in, you do your work, and then you get out and you can work on your recovery. Alternating side plank, first and foremost, we just always want to make sure that we have a good plank position, which is always a nice straight line all the time. But you're just going to be alternating from one side to the next. You want to stay long enough that you can display that you have control. The term that I'll use is like you got to pause first, as if someone's going to be taking your picture. You can pause and stay in one still position. To make it a bit harder, rather than kind of being on your feet here, you can have your feet closer to one another and kind of roll to the point where one foot is on top of the other. And even when you do that, you can even get to the point where you roll to one side, feet are stacked, and then lift the top leg to make it even harder. Swiss ball leg curl. The goal here is to try to keep your knees, hips, and shoulders in one straight line all the time as you're going up and as you're coming down. It gets a little bit tricky as you're trying to come up to keep those hips up, but again, you got to keep them up in a straight line. And I really want you to kind of really accentuate the way going out. So in this particular phase, he's going out like that. Make sure that you just don't let the ball kind of roll out. You need to control it on the way out, 2 to 3 seconds on the way out on this Swiss ball leg ball curl. Seated row, I really want you to stay tall on this one. If you want, you can have a little bit of bend in the knees. Try not to shoot your head forward like he is on this one, like that. Again, just hold it in your stomach for a second. You need to pause with it both when your arms get all the way extended on the way out here. We also need to pause on the way in here. So there's a pause when you get as close to your stomach as you can, and as when your arms get extended on the way out as well. So this is this seated row. Stir the pot exercise. The goal's here to sort of keep your hips level, so it should just look like a normal plank, except for you're just doing these big circles with your hands. The wider your feet get, the easier it is, but the bigger the circles are, the harder it gets. If you can think about it, you want to draw circles with your fists around your face as you do this exercise called stir the pot. Dumbbell Renegade Row. Keeping your hips level. Must always maintain this. If you get your feet wider, it makes it easier. If you bring them narrower, it makes it harder. The goal here is to make sure these hips don't move too much. If you think about having if you place like a mat or a baseball glove sort of on your hips here, I don't want them to fall off as you shift from side to side. Single leg box squat. We want to pick a box squat height that you can do, but it's roughly going to just be just below the height of your knee. Obviously you can make that lower or higher to account for your level of proficiency at this exercise, but that's ideally a weight that we're going to use. You just want to kind of tap your hips at the bottom. You don't want to sit down too much, and then you want to have your arms go out in front of you to act as a counterweight. If you're taller and you have a longer femurs, you really need to have a counterweight in your hands. You can use like a 10-pound plate or a couple really light dumbbells and shoot those hands out there to make this exercise doable. Swiss ball dumbbell press. The main thing about this one, when you come down at the bottom of it, to make sure that your elbows don't get too far down below your body. Just because your arms can get lower doesn't mean you necessarily should. You want to make sure that your hips are nice and level the entire time, and you really want to give yourself some space when you first set up for this exercise to make sure that you don't roll into anything like that. Anyway, Swiss ball dumbbell press.